Welcome to the CMO Spotlight. And today I'm featuring Jennifer Davis, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for LEARFIELD. Welcome, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We've known each other for a while. And so I'm just curious to hear more about your background and your path and your journey and your kind of marketing philosophy and those kinds of things. I wonder if you could just start by telling, I think you've been at Learfield now for about 1.5 years, and I know you spent time at Amazon before that and Honeywell and a couple other great companies. So I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your career path, and then we'll talk about Learfield and your role there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you and to catch up a bit. Learfield is, we like to say, the front door to college sports. We have exclusive relationships with universities all over the country, providing them a variety of services from sponsorship sales to ticket software to licensing services, et cetera, et cetera. So we actually not only serve the universities, but serve a key role in helping brands connect to college sports fans. And so I have the privilege of working with an organization that is spread across the country. We have teams located on university campuses, acting as an extension of these institutions and working with tens of thousands of brands across the country as they engage with
Awesome.
this fan base.
And I think we'll jump into your path too in a minute, but I think you actually helped them go through a bit of a rebrand too. Can you maybe talk about that really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. When I joined the company, the name of the organization was Learfield IMG College, which confusingly, but logically, was the result of a merger of the college division of IMG, which is a company that still exists and is a vibrant entity into itself, and a legacy Learfield company. So we brought those together and had this kind of mashup of a name, and it caused some confusion in the marketplace. You're smiling. You've seen this before.
Yeah.
As have I. And so one of the first things that I did when I joined the company is that I joined an investigation that was already in progress that our CEO, Kolga Hagen, had already kind of initiated. But I stepped into that. We completed research with all multiple stakeholder audiences, as you do in these times. And ultimately, we determined that the name Learfield was very resonant with our audience, and it was well understood in the space, although the definition could expand because people might have had a dated or incomplete view of what the company did, but it was a much better starting place than a brand new name for the enterprise. And so we chose Learfield, chose a new brand identity. Interestingly enough, it was one that we both got external help and tapped into the design community within the company.
Cool.
And the logo that you see today on our website at learfield.com and the like was actually one of the designs that was done internally. And now the person who led that is now my head of creative for the company. So it's a
Very
kind
cool.
of a fun backstory there. But yeah, we're really pleased with how well it was received. And again, it's given us a good brand, gives you a foundation for so many things. And so I feel like doing that work early on, literally in my first 90 days, we rolled that out, provided me the platform that we could then, build upon for years to come.
I love it. And it's cool that you have some great creative resources in-house that you could kind of use a mix of internal and external resources to help, and also that gives the your larger team, a stake in the outcome that you came up with. So that's great.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about
It was a fun project.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Tell us a little bit about your career path to this role. I think you spent 3.5 years at Amazon just prior to this, and then before that, I know you had a couple of pretty key roles, including one at Honeywell. So I don't know if you just tell us a little more about your path.
Right. Well, my background is in digital and technology, marketing and strategy roles. I started at a software startup right out of college
Mhm.
and kind of continued on that path, working for large public companies like Intel, private startups. Um, uh, what brought me to Atlanta and how we got to know each other is when I worked at Honeywell as the chief marketing officer for one of the divisions there. And then I made the move to Amazon Web Services, which was a great education. I feel like in some ways I went back to school and got, I don't know, a second MBA from Amazon, because I've been a long admirer of the company and the leadership principles and obviously the success that they've had in the space. So that was a great experience. When I first started conversations about the role at Learfield, I actually told the recruiter in all transparency, I'm an untraditional candidate for this role. I said, I've spent my career in technology,
Right,
B2B channels, um, working in a variety of industries, but never a day in sports.
right.
And it, not surprisingly, that's what they were looking for. They were looking for, somebody who could supplement the deep domain knowledge that my colleagues have in collegiate athletics and, related fields. And, I could bring in a different perspective. And so hopefully I've been able to do that. And certainly this past year has been a wild ride of me learning a whole new industry, which is really, really fun and engaging. And there's a reason why people love college sports.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to take a quick detour before we
Yeah,
get to the rest of the conversation, which is that you recently wrote a book. So
I
I'm curious
did.
to just hear a little bit about the book. What prompted you to want to write the book? What's the book about? And what's the how has the process been since you published the book?
Yeah, thanks for asking about it. Well, it had been on my bucket list for a while to write a book. I thought I had one, maybe more in me, and I enjoy writing. So I always thought maybe one day I would do it. So it was really for me a bucket list plus the pandemic.
Right.
Other people, I don't know, got fit on their Peloton or
I
learned to
started
bake.
playing trumpet. Yeah.
I see, awesome. Learned to bake sourdough bread. I did none of those things. I just sat at a computer and wrote a book, which was again an awesome experience and gave me an opportunity to reconnect with so many people who had been impactful in my career, as well as others who I admired that I interviewed for the book. So again, wonderful experience. It got published last summer, fall timeframe. So we're almost coming up on a year. And again, it was such a great experience to do it. And I'm proud of the work. The book is called Well-Made Decisions. And it's a bit of a play on words because the premise of the book is you can put, and you should, the appropriate amount of process and thought and diligence into the decisions that you make. And again, I'm lensing this primarily through business decisions, organizational decisions. But the truth of the matter is that what may be more important than the initial decision is what happens after.
Mm,
We often treat decisions as if they're a finish line, especially at maybe executive ranks where we say, well, I'm so glad we made that decision to enter that new market or invest in this technology or divest part of the company. But everyone else in the organization knows very well that it's a starting line of a lot of work streams and a lot more investment of time and energy, and frankly, a lot more decisions
yeah.
that follow. And so this book kind of hopefully empowers leaders to think about right sizing the process that they put into decisions and then focusing on the things that are going to lead to the outcomes after the decision is made.
Yeah. So my next question is was there a piece of advice that you got maybe early in your career that prompted you to think like this? Or is there a piece of advice that you would dispense to young people as a result of what you've learned this far?
Oh, so much. I actually feel like that's kind of the book is chocked with these kind of things
Right,
because,
right, right.
but so, you know, because in your career, so many people are generous and share, and you've learned those lessons. When you said advice that I was given, I know one of my first, P&L responsibilities, first kind of executive roles was under a CEO at a company called Planar, Balaji Krishnamurthy. And he taught me many, many things, but he was a big decision-making process
Mm,
enthusiast because he saw how important speed was in an organization as a differentiator and as a accelerator of the business in a competitive landscape. And so I feel like the seed was planted early with me that decision making is the key to speed, and speed is the key to a lot
mm.
of business success. So that's certainly something. That one of my favorite pieces of advice from the book was, which was actually something that I say the seed was planted decades ago, but it coalesced with some great language that was used at Amazon. And that is about differentiating the kind of decision that you need to make. Amazon uses the language, which I borrow and reference in the book, of one-way door and two-way door decisions.
Right. Is it reversible or not kind of thing?
Exactly. Which
Yeah.
means if it's, what color should the button be on the website? Pick somebody to decide, let them decide, let
Right.
them measure it, and then change their mind if it doesn't
Right.
work out.
Right. Right.
Things like rebranding a company, for instance,
Right.
maybe that has higher stakes. You don't want to do that
Right.
every
Right.
afternoon. So as a result, you put more rigor into that, but also with an eye for what is this implementation going to look like? And how can we set up this decision for success? And again, that success happens after the decision is made. So it was actually an interesting case study, if you will, to write this book and be going through the final editing stages when I started the role at Learfield, and then was able to turn around and make things like the rebrand of the company a bit of a capstone for me,
Yeah.
applying some of these things that I had spent, a year or more um, ruminating on, studying, reflecting on, and then being able to turn around and apply it in a real life situation, and to actually have the assurance, like, yeah, there's some good stuff here that any leader can use at any level of the company to apply to the decisions that they're influencing, whatever
Yeah.
those may be.
Well, I love that your book is focused on decisions that any person makes, particularly, business people, but just people in general. It's not a marketing specific book. It's not a, it's a book that anybody who is facing challenging decisions could understand at least what the best process is to make those decisions and determine, to your point early on, is this the kind of decision that is really hard to change if it doesn't go well, or is it an easy one to change if it goes well, and if it doesn't go well? So
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Well, and actually, I think you touch on something else, and that is that common vocabulary. Even, I mean, if people adopt the idea of one-way or two-way door decisions, reversible, non-reversible, type 1, type 2, depending, again,
Yeah, you're right.
the even that vocabulary is a great tool for managing up in organizations, because you could be the person that ends up asking the question of your boss or your boss's boss to get them to see the problem differently. And so again, I'm hoping that leaders of all levels will find more tools for their toolbox.
I love that, and the idea of saying to your boss, this is a decision that's super important, or this is a decision that if we're not right, we can move on, and and it won't be the end of the world.
Right.
I believe that everybody has a superpower, and I know you might have a couple of superpowers, more than one. I'm curious what you've been told your superpower is, or what you believe your superpower to be.
I have been told and rely on a lot my ability to ideate. I'm very generative. Like I can create a lot of ideas.
Mhm.
I can process information pretty quickly and create a lot of I can put a lot of words around things pretty quickly. So one of the things where I feel like I can lean into that is we've now, just to give an example, at Learfield, we've gone through rebranding and repositioning several of the business lines. Once we did the enterprise, we needed to do some business lines. And there's just a comfort that comes. And I know this is a strength because I have plenty of people who told me that what I'm about to describe sounds like a nightmare to them.
Right, not comfortable for them.
Yeah. So when I'm ideating something, I'll like pop up a document, and in 10 minutes, I'll see how many ideas I can come up with, names for businesses, names for product lines, ways to spread the word about whatever the topic is. And again, it's not uncommon that in 5 or 10 minutes, I might have 40 ideas.
Right.
And other people will be like, okay, in 5 to 10 minutes, I would see a blinking cursor,
Right,
like you're killing me.
page.
Now, every superpower has a shadow side.
Right.
And that kind of generation and that kind of ideation can not only generate a lot of bad ideas too, I'm for the first to admit, and so it takes some wading through. But also, I understand that can be quite overwhelming for other, teammates that I work on. So I always try to frame it to say, none of these are very baked. I am not in love with any of these things.
Right.
I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons of every idea I came up with from my perspective, which I hope is an invitation for you to do the same. And then there are extra fields at the bottom of this table. Maybe some of the ideas that I had are just actually the starter.
Right.
Something much better that you're going to come up with.
Right.
So I'm hoping I've kickstarted a process, not that I've become the process. So but that I learned over time.
Yeah, having been an entrepreneur for 8 years, I can tell you that one of the things that I love about being an entrepreneur and that I'm probably, good at is thinking about additional opportunities. And the problem for many entrepreneurs is that everything looks like an opportunity. And if you chase every opportunity, then you're not probably excelling at your core business in some way. And so it's been a constant challenge for me to make sure that I'm focusing on the things that are most important in the business and not getting distracted by all of the opportunities that are out there. But I think it is a powerful, tool in your toolbox to be able to create and to be able to generate and to be able to ideate. And then also to be able to your point, not fall in love with your ideas so much that they become precious, even if they're not amazing from the start. I think you're generating a lot of coal that needs to have pressure and time to be worked into a diamond. And it sounds like you have a pretty good process of doing that too, but the beginning stages could look rough,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, I think you're right. What happens over time is that you add to maybe a core strength, skills around building the right team around you, skills around discipline, skills around strategy, skills around communication. Those skills need to constantly be refined and grown. And I'm certainly on a journey on all of those things. But I think that's the challenge for all of us, is that we have things that come easy and flow naturally, but we'll have to put a little guardrails around those, because it's easy for a strength to burn if it burns too bright.
Makes total sense. So that leads me to a question just about values. I'm curious if there are certain values that you want to demonstrate as a leader, or are there certain values that you demand in your team? Like if they don't meet these values, they're probably not a good fit.
Oh, well, I mean, off the top are things like honesty and integrity.
Yeah, right.
And again, there's some fundamental kind of table stakes that everybody should do. So it starts there. For me, I would say I'm a naturally optimistic person. And so people who have worked closely with me have found that if you lead with positivity, we get to a better spot. And so I would say it's less of a value than it is probably a style thing. But you know, I tend to surround myself with people who hopefully have skills in areas I don't, and have strengths in areas I don't, which means I tend to have a lot of analyticals actually that work with and for me, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And we can drive each other crazy too,
Right,
because I'm like, and the
right.
good news is, and they're like, and the problem would be,
right.
So again, it's probably finding that balance with that. And again, I think that it does come to values in that creating space for everybody to be their true self, to bring their strengths, but to find a way to work together in that environment. And then I would say the other value that actually shows up in multiple kind of aspects of my life when I'm purposeful about it is a value around hospitality. Often people think about hospitality as being like potlucks in people's homes and summer barbecues and the like, and I love all of that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's about inviting people in to a problem so that they can be part of the solution. And so pitching a big tent and inviting people in, finding ways to do that without slowing down the decision-making processes, which is that's the art of this whole thing. But that focus on hospitality and creating space for and being open to the contribution of a wide variety of people in the organization or in the industry is, I found, critical for business success and something that everybody needs to model.
I love that. I'm going to shift gears a minute and talk about, at setup, we're matchmakers, mostly between brands and marketing agencies, but other kinds of matches that we make. So I'm just curious about how it doesn't have to be specific to any one agency or something, but how have you worked with agencies in the past, or how do you work with agencies today?
Yeah, actually, our relationships with agencies are interesting because we have multifaceted relationships. So we, as a marketing organization, out to promote the brand of Learfield, to build awareness and affinity, to generate a lead funnel and the like for our business, we work with a variety of agencies that typically provide specialty assistance to us. So they're digital specialists, or they, work on the social side. That then we, kind of create the kind of virtual team that will help us do those things. But we also have another relationship with agencies, and that is because we sell marketing solutions. So any agency that works with a brand that wants to connect to college sports fans or those demographics of consumers, whether those be, Gen Z, college age,
right,
new consumers, in the marketplace, or it's, established fans that, interestingly enough, the college sports fan market is about 180 million fans strong, which actually makes it combined larger than any professional league.
Wow. Yeah.
And from your own experience as an alumni and fan of Wake Forest, that people are loyal to their schools and their college, even at a higher level than they are for pro teams in general. And so that, combined with the higher educated populace, pretty gender balanced, 42% of college fans are women. So you start adding those things up, and it actually is an attractive consumer base that agencies look into so that
Yeah,
they can
right.
advise their brand clients on where college might fit into the mix. And so we work hand in hand, arm in arm with agencies all over the country and many global agencies as well on campaigns at the local, regional, or national level to attract this audience. So again, we're a partner and
Yeah, right, right.
a customer, a
They're also
client.
customers, right? They're customers of yours, and you're customers of theirs, or clients
Right,
of theirs.
right.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you kind of mentioned that you tend to work with specialists when you're the client.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's certain disciplines of marketing that you feel you would most frequently want to outsource because you want that outside perspective. And are there certain disciplines where you said, I really don't want to outsource that because it's core to something that in the business?
Yeah, no, great question. The more technical the specialty is and the more
Mm-hmm.
infrequent we use that, that's when we go to outside. So for instance, I cannot keep an SEO expert fully employed, and no one wants to be a team of one
Yeah.
for social optimization, and what we're doing on the website and search and et cetera. So we tend to go outside so that we can tap into best in class talent that have, a perspective pulled from multiple clients and industries to bring that expertise. So that's an example of a kind of a technical skill that we would be
Right.
looking for outside. For the things that we keep in-house, it is probably more upstream from that. We've made investments this year in product marketing, which is the work to develop the value propositions, the messaging, the who, what, when, where, why of the product that make it more resonant. And that is critical to keep in-house. So I personally, for our business at the stage that we're at, I don't like to outsource that kind of strategy. I want that done in-house, but then we need help ideating, making the ideas bigger, creating the content, and then making sure technically it gets executed on all the various platforms and tools that will make it effective. And so I would say that's kind of how we think about that.
Right. So as marketers, we often work with other parts of the organization who don't necessarily live and breathe what we live and breathe. So I'm curious how you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions within the team.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts back at that theme of hospitality, inviting people in, not we don't lead with click-through rates, and
Right.
you know what I mean? Like,
You
but
get
we
them to
invite.
laser focus on one thing if you bring them
No,
in with focusing on one
no,
thing.
no, 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 no. But inviting others who have different backgrounds and
Mm.
perspectives into the conversations at a time when they can actually be a voice and influence where we go. So whether it's a rebranding exercise or a new campaign development or an event that we might be throwing, early and often feedback helps bring others along, and obviously makes it all better, because that feedback is so valuable, especially for me and others on my team that might be new to sports. I mean, we have a lot to learn, and so being really curious has been key. And I would say is something that you can never forget to do, even if you think that curiosity sends a strong message that we are partners in solving problems for our clients.
Right.
And that's very important. I would say the other thing is alignment on goals. Even starting in a new organization, learning everything about it. My plan for the last fiscal year included some shared goals that we were not going to achieve on our own, and the revenue organization couldn't achieve on their own. And so we looked together and created some common metrics for our business. Last year it was about win rate of new client proposals, where we felt like our positioning, our value propositions, how we were talking about offerings and solutions again, we could have an impact on that. And about renewal rates in our business. We want people, brands seeing so much value that they're loyal in this space and build long-term relationships with the fans of any particular school. And so that is achieved through renewal rates. And again, my team isn't responsible for activating these campaigns.
Right.
There's lots of things that can go right and wrong after our involvement, but that's the kind of alignment, that whole customer life cycle alignment that we wanted to play a part in. And so goal alignment becomes really critical.
I think that's great. So the one last question kind of about marketing, and then we'll jump into some fun questions just for fun. I'm curious if there was a campaign or a program that you've run in either at Learfield or even in a past life that taught you a great deal, because either it was a miserable failure and you learned a lesson that you really needed to learn, or it was a huge success and it's something you'd like to emulate or duplicate in the future.
Yeah. Well, lots of examples of both, as you might imagine.
Right.
If you've done this for any length of time, hopefully you have some failures along the way, because that's how you learn. But one that immediately came to mind for me is last August, we published the inaugural Intercollegiate Fan Report. And just a little background, over the past couple years, Learfield, through all of these services provided to universities, through this connectivity to fans, we've created the biggest data analytics platform in college sports. We have 30 million first-party fan records,
wow,
which give us a view of the demographics and the psychographics and preferences of college sports fans. And for the first time, we developed that so that we could be of use to our schools, and then take that data in aggregate and use it to inform our brand proposals and other things. Again, we want to be a data-driven organization and do everything from customer insights. But we had never zoomed out and aggregated a picture of what college sports fans were like, nor had anyone else, because of the fragmentation.
And,
so
and nobody else is positioned to be able to do that better than Learfield, given your audience,
given our reach. Yeah. So we took it not only as something that we could do, but something that we had responsibility to do, to educate the market. And so we aggregated this data, working really closely with our data analytics team, as you might imagine, and pulled together this report. And the 20 some odd pages of analysis and charts and graphs really show, again, give a clearer picture than had ever been published before. But then we had this thing, and we had never done something like this as an organization. I'm certainly very familiar with content marketing strategies, having used them my entire career, but Learfield had never done something like this. And so really, for the first time, we were putting something out there that was a piece of kind of flagship content, and using it. We gated content for the first time in Learfield's history, and then figured out the back end systems of what we would do when people raised their hands. We hold privacy very important. So if they don't raise their hand, they get the report with our full compliments. But if they want to know more or want to have a conversation, we wanted to facilitate that. So we had to create the processes behind the scenes. And one of the things that whole thing reiterated for me is sometimes you have to start to figure out what you need to do. So we were literally, building the plane, flying the plane, whatever the analogy is, but we could have waited. We could have waited until we had a perfect process. We could have waited until we thought through all of the corner cases and the variations and the decision trees. But instead, we decided, let's put this out there. Let's start with what we know, and then let's figure out what we need to do to move this forward. And we did. And we ended up, generating, hundreds of inquiries, and for the first time being able to track those through to actually see what the revenue organization did with them. and what resulted from that. And again, we're seeing results come in like every week. More business is being attributed to those hand raisers, if you will. And so now, despite how manual it is, despite the fact that the systems are not quite as perfect as we aspire for them to be, we actually can paint a picture of what that vision could look like that helps justify the investment that we make to scale it over time.
Right.
And it brings other people into the process. So we can say, here's what it looks like. The reason we're tracking this all the way through is we are here to help you drive this revenue. And so we know you have stout goals ahead. And as a result, we have robust goals too, because that's how we're going to achieve together. So I would say for those of you that might be out there thinking, oh, if only I had this perfect system, I had all the resources, I had whatever, like it doesn't happen, right?
Right.
And so think about how to scale it down, treat it like a pilot, install a bit of a hinge, if you will, on our door analogy, install hinge, right? So that you can learn along the way. And trust me, the learning will be more valuable than the leads you generate.
100%. Yeah. I as a creator, and I know you're a creator too. I'm not, I can't paint, I can't draw, or that kind of thing, but I'm a creative person. And as a creative person, you have to put things out into the world before you can know whether they're a hit or whether they need more refinement. Or you put version 1, as a technology person, a software person, it's like, what's the beta that you can get out into the world? And then you can do version 2 and 3 and 4 once the beta is either successful or flops.
Absolutely. And, in technology, we call it, minimum viable product.
Right.
At Amazon, they called it minimum lovable product. That was, but sometimes the minimal lovable product isn't as lovable as you'd like it to be. But the idea is that you're going down a path, and if you keep your ear to what clients are telling you, you're going to get smarter so much faster, and that's going to be the differentiation. Because the version 2, 3, and 4 are going to be so much more tuned to what the client really needs than version 2, 3, and 4 would be if you went off in a vacuum and tried to invent it yourself.
You just gave me a flash to a different analogy, which is that political candidates that have tough primaries are usually better candidates in the general election than those that have easy primaries, right?
Right. Well, because it's been vetted. Right?
Yep.
Now, like literally, they've been vetted.
You're battle tested, right?
You're battle tested. You know how to answer the tough questions on a smaller stage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you're talking
Stakes are not as high,
20 people asking a hard question with the news not there before you're put on the big stage. You're absolutely right. So how do you do that for yourself? How do you do that for your own career? Well, you have to do stuff. You have to put yourself out there. You're totally right.
Yeah, I love it. All right, a couple of fun questions. The first is there a movie or a band or a book or a sports team or a quote that really inspires you?
Well, I just saw Top Gun Maverick. That's been on my mind. And I love, it kind of relates to what we're talking about, this whole idea of minimizing the use of CGI, getting in the game, right? And the crew and the cast of that movie so proudly likes to do their own stunts and show the real footage. And again, like that should be all of us, right?
Right.
Like
does his or her own stunts, is that the mantra, right?
Totally. and have the G suit to prove it. So I think that was a good reminder even recently. There's a Goethe quote about creating that if you have an idea, take action on it. There's magic in doing. I have regularly referred to that concept, is that if you have some urgency about something, again, you can make a lot of progress on those things.
In the EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, we call it a bias towards action. it sounds like that might be part of your mantra, is bias
Yeah.
towards action.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's a where you find joy or inspiration outside of your family, which is an
Okay.
easy answer. Where do you find joy or inspiration outside of your family?
Well, I resonate when you said I'm a creative person. I am inspired by art and
Mm.
architecture. Um, I love travel. Back when that was in fashion, I'm
It's
looking
back.
forward
It's
to
back in
it
fashion,
being
I
back
think.
in
Yeah.
fashion again.
Yeah.
But I often read like interior design magazines for
Mm.
fun, or we'll think about how we might remodel our basement, or sometimes I will grab a paintbrush. I have hacking skills in this area,
Yeah.
but just as a creative outlet. And so, yeah, I would say the arts certainly inspire me, even if there isn't a direct application. I'm not taking something from a painting and moving it into a campaign, but it's just the different way of thinking,
Yeah.
which is so inspiring to me.
Well, there's the book Art Steals. I think it's something like that. I think I'm
Yeah.
misquoting the title of the book, but I think that there's something to either inspire something, directly inspiring something, or
Mhm.
indirectly fueling the creative thinking process.
100%. And actually, Austin's second book, Show Your Work, is what we were talking about earlier, about putting yourself out there as an artist, no matter what your craft is. So yeah, there's a lot of wisdom to that.
So for those watching or listening, Austin Kleon, right, is the
Yeah,
author
yeah,
we're talking about. And the first book is called, I think I butchered it. It's something about art steals,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. So you'll find it if you Google
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
Austin Kleon, right. Well, Jennifer, this has been such a delight. Jennifer Davis is the Chief Marketing Officer for LEARFIELD, and this has been such a joy to have this conversation with you today.
Well, thanks again for having me. Yeah, it's fun to reflect on some of these lessons, and hopefully there's some nuggets in there for everybody who's listening today.
There are a ton of nuggets in there. It's so much fun.